Mad at me.
Mayoral Monday here at The Point. We can't get enough of the 2027 race for Chicago's top job. The election is still several months away, but for the candidates, right now is an all-out push. With us tonight, two seasoned political operatives who know how to win. Let's get to the point.
From Chicago's very own, with WGN political editor Tahman Bradley, this is The Point.
Good evening. It was hardly a secret. Over the weekend, the answer to a burning question over next year's political calendar. Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias, who is running for re-election statewide in November, says he's also jumping into the February contest for Chicago mayor.
I believe fundamentally that government can be both competent and compassionate. That's exactly the kind of leadership that I'll bring to City Hall. Not government that makes excuses, government that delivers, government that demands better and that gets things done.
Giannoulias enters the race with $22 million in the bank and the backing of several influential labor unions. He's casting himself as a progressive who doesn't like labels. He says he backs a millionaire's tax and a minimum wage hike, though he won't say how much more he thinks workers should make. Here tonight, to get to the point, superstar political strategists Joanna, Klonsky, and Pat Brady. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Thanks for having us.
I'm so glad that you came in. Pat's a regular. Yeah. He does every show that he can. All right, so how did that rollout go?
I just thought it was incredibly interesting to see him position himself as a progressive, especially as we see the Mayor Johnson, not confirm whether or not he plans to run again. So that progressive lane remains wide open. So he's talking about the millionaire's tax. He's standing here with all sorts of organized labor. I mean, Alexi Giannoulias. He's talking about raising the minimum wage. And in his new ad, he's talking about affordable housing. These are all progressive policy core plank platform issues. So interesting to see him sort of try to take up that space as well as the more mainstream center lane as well.
Pat, was he effective in selling himself as Alexi the progressive?
I think his rollout was effective. I was a little surprised by Alexi the progressive, having watched him for 20 years, but I think he was probably trying to get ahead of it a little bit. If Brandon Johnson doesn't get in and they try to pick some other progressive, that's a real state that he wants to own before they get a chance to, or somebody else gets a chance to get in. But I was a little surprised at the progressiveness of it. But this thing, no matter what anybody says, this thing I think is wide open. You know very well in January, what Lori was like 4%. 11, 12 people, you only need 12, 13% to win. I don't care how much money you have, and Alexi's got every advantage in the world. I don't think there's any front runner. I think it's still wide open.
I couldn't agree more.
Is there anything that Alexi's opponents could seize on from the rollout? I mean, there's this massive Oppo file. I didn't hear much talk about it over the weekend, so that's successful.
Well, there's a lot of time. Actually, we're 203 days out. I just checked this. There's a lot of time to place opposition research and attack each other. If I were any of the other candidates in the race right now, I'd be trying to tell my own story and introduce myself. A lot of these people no one's ever heard of.
I agree. We're early for the hits.
Okay, so Mayor Johnson, still a factor. Don't know if he's running, but he reacted to this. He sort of had two reactions today. In one breath, he brushed off Giannoulias, and another, without mentioning him by name, he threw an elbow.
As far as the politics of Chicago, there's a reason why we call it the Windy City, right? You'll have different waves and people blowing in and out, but the thing that's most constant and what's most still and what remains today is the Johnson administration. Right now, you have people who are declaring their candidacy for offices while already giving the word that they're going to close schools. The same interests that shut down schools, the same interests that closed mental health clinics, the same interests that fired working people across this city, those same interests want to take us back to a time of trauma and torment and pain. I want to make this absolutely clear, not just about sustainable community schools. We are not going back, Chicago. They didn't have a policy or a practice or a decision when buses were being sent here. They didn't have any ideas when Trump was trying to send ICE into our city. Who stood up for people in this city? My administration stood up for this city.
That sounds like someone running.
It does sound like someone running, and he has a good case to make and the name ID to match it, but I'm not sure why he's waiting so long to make clear what his plans are. Again, we're only 203 days out. Time is the only non-renewable resource in this campaign. He can always raise more money, recruit more volunteers, but it's just getting kind of late.
He's been so lucky, though, in two things. First of all, Donald Trump, the gift that keeps giving for Brandon Johnson, because he can, that line of attack on I stood up to Trump and ICE, pretty good. And he's also gotten lucky because crime in this city is down. Not shootings aren't, but crime in general is. Even though I think that's more credit to our state's attorney and the police superintendent than it is the mayor. He's a much better candidate now than he was 2 years ago. But this harken back to what? I'm not sure what he's talking about. So I don't know.
Well, I just think that when he's pointing to the Trump administration and the Trump moment, especially October, November of last year when we went through Operation Midway Blitz, his numbers, his approval ratings did improve actually after that moment, because people felt that he did stand up against that moment of military occupation from the Republican administration. You now have an electorate that has experienced something that we had never experienced before when it comes to seeing armed military in our streets, seeing their neighbors taken and disappeared off the streets. A lot of Chicagoans have now been hit with tear gas that had never been hit with tear gas before, just as a result of that operation. And that may really impact folks' voting behaviors.
Joanna, I want to take you back. It was 4 years ago, summertime. Lori Lightfoot,
Sure.
Low polling, but had to decide whether or not she was going to run. She ultimately did. She got in sooner than Mayor Johnson, assuming that he's running. What were your takeaway from that? Like, if you were advising Brandon Johnson, what would you be telling him about he should do right now?
Well, he needs to make clear what his plans are pretty soon. It's very hard to raise the money that's going to be required for this before you've made clear whether you're even running or not. Mayor Lightfoot announced she was running for re-election, I believe it was June 6th or 7th, 2022. So we're now in August. He still hasn't made clear. And as long as he doesn't make it clear, he also keeps his lane. He keeps anyone else from getting into his lane who might announce. So there can't be another person from his progressive movement sort of part of the world who can jump in as long as he's taking up that lane.
Pat, I was going to ask about that. Is there time for someone else to give this a look, maybe around Labor Day?
Oh, sure. There's plenty. I'm not a huge amount of time, but yeah, but somebody could get in. If she doesn't get in and that progressive gets in, that's going to really create a lot of, Alexi's trying to take a little bit of that progressive lane. And it'd be interesting to see if a real long-time progressive gets in, that's going to cause him problems. But it's all about getting a couple of those 5 or 6 coalitions in the city and bundling them together and getting to the runoff. And but he's going to have problems. I mean, he's been tremendously unpopular. He hasn't reached out too much beyond his base. And there are a lot of problems in this city, and he's going to have to wear the jacket for it. We got to get through a lot of things in the next couple months, and people are going to point out, I think, this administration, I think, has been a pretty big failure.
So we have about a dozen candidates. I wanted to get your take on who you think might catch fire and sort of break out. We can put video or maybe even the bracket on the screen, because I sort of wanted to do a power rankings if we could. 1, 2, and 3. Who's in first place as we begin the contest? Second place, third place. Just have at it. Who do you think can sort of break out? Who's in the top tier right now? Let me ask you about Susana Mendoza, who's run before, came in 5th
Yeah, well,
last
think about
time.
this. There's 200,000 arguably Republican votes in the city of Chicago. That's how many Trump got in the last election. Susana Mendoza could pick off some of those because I think she's a little more conservative on the public safety issues.
Will that get you to the runoff, and will that win the general?
It might get you to the runoff. I'm not saying it wins you the general, but I mean, just to get to the runoff, which is kind of the goal right now, which this process, I'd like to talk about that another day. This is not a great process, but I think she could do that, just targeting those votes. What do you think?
I think that both Mayor Johnson and Mayor Lightfoot were elected by mobilizing white liberal voters in places like the North Side, 40th Ward, 47th Ward, and then being able to pick up a portion of the black vote and a smaller, to some extent.
And that liberal lakefront vote might be up for grabs this time.
It may be, but I don't think that Susana Mendoza has much of a shot at it. She's been a bit too conservative to be able to appeal to that part of the electorate. I just don't see it.
So then people might be shopping. Is there anyone that had a good rollout? Are you seeing good messaging that might connect?
I thought Matt Brewer had a pretty good rollout. The message was progressive, but, we don't need to kill business. And he has a great life story. I thought that was a really effective rollout.
I agree. He has a really interesting life story, and he's accomplished a lot.
The battle for Chicago public schools, everything going on there, what impact might that have on this contest?
Money. C2's got to play in those races too, right? And that Johnson hasn't raised any money. And if they don't have, he's got a big disadvantage on the money race right now.
I think that's right. The Chicago Teachers Union has been expected to, many people are saying, well, they're just going to come in. If Mayor Johnson decides to run again, CTU will just pay for the whole thing. He doesn't need to be raising money right now. Well, they're also going to have big investments to make in this first ever fully elected school board election that's coming up in
That's
November.
11 races, right? They've got something like
Plus
that.
a citywide school board president race.
Yeah.
That's on the ballot in November. That will be expensive for anybody who wants to, who cares about the future of the public schools and wants to invest in those races.
I've got about 15 seconds left. We talked a lot about Mayor Johnson. I mean, if he gets in, is he a shoo-in to make the runoff?
No one's a shoo-in to make the runoff.
Yeah.
It's just too unpredictable of an environment right now.
But I
to say
wouldn't
that.
write him off. If people
I
write
don't
him off, I'm
either.
like, hey, if it were me, I'm like, this guy's, if you're going to tier it like you tried to do, he's in the very top tier, of course.
Yes, I would definitely not write him off.
All right, Joanna Klonsky, Pat Brady,
Good to
thank
see
you
you.
guys so much. Back in 60 seconds. We hear all the time about candidates who say the rent is too high. Tonight, a tip of the hat to a candidate saying the food is no good. Candidate for Chicago Board of Education President Hilario Dominguez is campaigning on improving school lunch. Dominguez is the CTU-backed candidate, so he's firmly in line with the union's agenda, but he's also making videos about the food. What is it and how can it be improved? To some, that might feel trivial or random, but it's a way to grab voters' attention. And that is the point. I'm Tahman Bradley. Micah is back with more news tonight at 9 o'clock. The Forecasters is next on WGN+. Good night.